The contraction hit like lightning through my body, and I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter so hard my knuckles turned white. The clock on the stove read 11:47 p.m. This was it. After 9 months of waiting, my daughter was ready to come into this world, and I was completely alone. "Ryan," I whispered to the empty house, then louder, "Ryan?" But there was no answer. Just the hollow echo of my voice bouncing off the walls of our bedroom upstairs where my husband should have been sleeping but wasn't. Another wave of pain crashed over me, stronger this time. I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands and dialed his number. Straight to voicemail. Again. The 4th time tonight. "Please, baby, I need you," I said into the phone, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "The contractions are getting closer. I think this is really happening. Please call me back." I hung up and immediately called again. Voicemail. Then again. Voicemail. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. The contractions were coming every 5 minutes now, each one stealing my breath and making my vision blur at the edges. I called my mother-in-law, Patricia. No answer. My sister-in-law, Nicole. Voicemail. Where was everyone? It was like the whole world had decided to disappear the exact moment I needed them most. I tried to remember what they taught us in those birthing classes Ryan had reluctantly attended. Breathe through the pain. Time the contractions. Get to the hospital when they're 3 minutes apart. But what do you do when you're alone and scared and your husband has vanished into thin air? Another contraction gripped me and I doubled over, my phone clattering to the floor. When it passed, I picked it up with trembling fingers. I had to get help. I had to get to the hospital. I scrolled through my contacts looking for someone, anyone who might answer at midnight. My thumb hovered over my best friend Lisa's name, but she was 3 states away on a business trip. My neighbor Mrs. Thompson was 78 and didn't drive at night. The pain was getting worse. Much worse. I could feel something changing in my body, an urgency that made my heart race with fear. This baby wasn't going to wait much longer. In my panic, I started typing a text message to Ryan. Emergency. In labor. Need hospital now. Where are you? But in my haste and pain, I must have hit the wrong contact. The message sent before I could double-check the number. Seconds later, my phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello?" I gasped in the middle of another contraction. "Is this Zara? You just sent me a message about being in labor. I think you might have texted the wrong person, but are you okay?" The voice was deep, concerned, completely unfamiliar. I don't know who you are," I managed to say through gritted teeth. "I was trying to reach my husband. My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm a doctor. Where are you right now? Are you alone?" "Yes," I whispered, and saying it out loud made it real in a way that terrified me. "My husband isn't answering his phone. Nobody is answering. I don't know what to do. What's your address?" I should have been suspicious. I should have asked questions. But another contraction hit, and all I could think about was getting help, getting to safety, making sure my baby would be okay. I gave him my address. "I'm 20 minutes away," he said. "Stay on the phone with me. Don't hang up." "What's your husband's name?" "Ryan," I said, tears streaming down my face now. "Ryan Coleman. He was supposed to be here. He promised he would be here." "Okay, Zara. I'm getting in my car right now. Tell me about your contractions. How far apart are they?" For the next 20 minutes, this stranger's voice was my lifeline. He talked me through each wave of pain, told me when to breathe, asked me questions to keep me focused. I found myself trusting him completely, this unknown person who had answered a wrong number text in the middle of the night. "I can see your house," he said finally. "I'm pulling into your driveway now." I heard a car door slam, then footsteps on my front porch, then a gentle knock. "It's Ethan," he called through the door. I unlocked it and pulled it open, and found myself face to face with a tall man with kind brown eyes and dark hair. He was wearing scrubs under a jacket and he was carrying a medical bag. "You're really a doctor," I said, relief flooding through me. "Emergency medicine," he said, stepping inside and immediately assessing me with professional eyes. "How are you feeling? Any urge to push?" Before I could answer, the strongest contraction yet hit me. I grabbed onto his arm without thinking, and he supported my weight without hesitation. "We need to get you to the hospital now," he said when it passed. "Can you walk to my car?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching it happen to someone else. This stranger was taking charge, making decisions, being everything my husband should have been. As he helped me to his car, I caught sight of myself in the hallway mirror. My face was streaked with tears, my hair was a mess, and I was wearing an old nightgown. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman abandoned in her most vulnerable moment. My bag, I said suddenly. I packed a hospital bag. Where is it? Upstairs in the bedroom. He helped me into the passenger seat, then ran upstairs to get my bag. When he came back down, his expression was different. Confused. Angry. Zara, he said carefully, getting into the driver's seat. Is your husband supposed to be home tonight? Yes, I said. He said he was working late, but he was supposed to be home by 10. Why? He started the car and began driving toward the hospital. The bed upstairs. It doesn't look like anyone slept in it tonight. And there are 2 wine glasses on the nightstand. The words hit me harder than any contraction. 2 wine glasses. In my bedroom. Where Ryan was supposed to be sleeping alone while I waited downstairs for labor to start. That can't be right, I whispered. But even as I said it, pieces started falling into place. The late nights that had become more frequent. The way he'd been distant during my pregnancy. The phone calls he took in other rooms. The sudden business trips. Another contraction gripped me, but this time the physical pain mixed with something much worse. The pain of realization. Of betrayal. Of understanding that my husband hadn't just missed the birth of our daughter by accident. He had chosen to miss it. I'm sorry, Ethan said quietly, focused on driving but clearly wanting to comfort me. I shouldn't have said anything. Not right now. No, I said through tears that had nothing to do with labor pains. I needed to know. As we pulled into the hospital parking lot, I realized that this night had changed everything. Not just because my daughter was about to be born, but because I finally understood who my husband really was. And more importantly, I was beginning to understand who I needed to become. The stranger beside me had shown me more care and concern in 30 minutes than my husband had shown me in months. He had answered a wrong number text and dropped everything to help someone he'd never met. That was the moment I knew my old life was over. Whatever came next, I would never again accept being treated as less than I deserved. The hospital moved in a blur of bright lights and urgent voices. Ethan stayed by my side as nurses wheeled me through the emergency entrance, rattling off medical information I barely understood. But his presence was steady, calm, reassuring in a way that made me feel safe despite everything falling apart. I need to call Ryan, I said as they transferred me to a hospital bed. He needs to know. I'll try calling him, Ethan offered. You focus on what's happening right now. A nurse named Janet began checking my vital signs while another nurse prepared in 4. How far apart are the contractions? Janet asked. About 3 minutes, Ethan answered when I couldn't find my voice. They've been consistent for the last hour. And you are? Janet looked at him with curiosity. Dr. Ethan Brooks, emergency medicine at Metro General. I'm a friend helping her get here safely. The way he said friend was gentle, not wanting to complicate an already difficult situation. But I caught something in his tone, a protectiveness that my own husband had never shown. Dr. Martinez, the attending physician, arrived and examined me quickly. You're at 8 centimeters, she announced. This baby is coming tonight, probably within the next few hours. Is your husband on his way? I'm trying to reach him, I said, though the words felt hollow. Ethan had stepped out into the hallway, his phone pressed to his ear, but I could see through the glass door that he was shaking his head. He came back and looking frustrated. Straight to voicemail, he said quietly. I left a message explaining the situation. Another contraction hit, stronger than before, and I gripped the bed rails. Ethan immediately moved to my side, offering his hand. Breathe through it, he said. You're doing great. I don't understand, I gasped when it passed. Where could he be? What if something happened to him? Ethan and Janet exchanged a look that I didn't miss. Janet cleared her throat diplomatically. Sometimes labor starts faster than expected. People don't always have time to get to the hospital right away. But I could see in their faces what they weren't saying. In their experience, husbands who cared found a way to be there. The next 2 hours passed in waves of pain and moments of clarity. Ethan never left my side. He held my hand through contractions, helped me with breathing exercises, and spoke to me in a calm, steady voice that kept me anchored when the pain threatened to overwhelm me. Tell me about yourself, he said during one of the quieter moments between contractions. What do you do for work? I'm a graphic designer, I said. Or I was before. Well, before everything. I gestured at my swollen belly. Ryan wanted me to take a break from freelancing during the pregnancy. Said he could handle the finances. Do you enjoy it? Design work? I love it, I said, and realized I hadn't talked about my work with enthusiasm in months. I love creating something beautiful from nothing. Making brands come to life. I miss it actually. You'll get back to it, he said with certainty that surprised me. Talented people always find their way back to what they love. It struck me that this stranger believed in me more than my own husband did. Ryan had talked about my little design hobby, like it was something cute but impractical, something I'd naturally give up once I became a mother. "What about you?" I asked. "How did you become a doctor?" His face lit up in a way that told me he loved his work. I knew I wanted to help people from the time I was a kid. Emergency medicine lets me be there for people on their worst days, hopefully make them a little better. "Like tonight," I said. "Like tonight," he agreed. "Though I have to say this is a first for me. I've never had someone accidentally text me during labor before." Despite everything, I laughed. "I can't believe I sent that message to the wrong person. What are the odds?" "Maybe it wasn't wrong," he said quietly. "Maybe it was exactly right." Before I could ask what he meant, another contraction gripped me, this one different from the others. Stronger. More urgent. "I need to push," I said, panic rising in my voice. Janet pressed the call button and suddenly the room filled with people. Dr. Martinez appeared, the lights got brighter, and everything shifted into the final phase. "Where's her husband?" Dr. Martinez asked, noting the empty chair beside my bed. "Still trying to reach him," Ethan said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Well, you're here," Dr. Martinez said to him. "Are you staying?" Ethan looked at me, his expression asking permission. I nodded, unable to speak but desperately not wanting to be alone. "I'm staying," he said. What happened next was both the most difficult and most beautiful experience of my life. With Ethan holding my hand and cheering me on, I brought my daughter into the world at 4:47 a.m. "She's perfect," Dr. Martinez announced, placing my baby on my chest. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. I looked down at my daughter's tiny face, her perfect little fingers, and felt my heart expand in ways I didn't know were possible. She had wispy dark hair and the most beautiful brown skin. She was absolutely perfect. "She's beautiful, Zara," Ethan said softly, and when I looked up at him, there were tears in his eyes. "You did amazing." "We should try your husband again," Janet said gently. Reality crashed back over me. Ryan had missed it. He had missed the birth of his daughter. His phone calls had gone unanswered while I labored alone, while a stranger held my hand and coached me through the most important moment of my life. "Let me call him," I said, though my hands were shaking as I held my baby. Ethan dialed the number and handed me the phone. It rang once, twice, 3 times. "Zara?" Ryan's voice was groggy, confused. "What time is it?" "It's almost 5 in the morning," I said. "Ryan, where are you?" There was a pause. A telling pause. I fell asleep at the office. Had a huge project deadline. "Why are you calling so early?" "I've been trying to call you all night," I said, my voice getting stronger. "I was in labor, Ryan. Our daughter was born an hour ago." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. "You had the baby?" he finally said. "But it wasn't due for another 2 weeks." "Babies don't follow schedules," Dr. Martinez said loud enough for him to hear. "Your wife has been trying to reach you since midnight." My phone was on silent," Ryan said. "I had no idea. Is everything okay? Is the baby okay?" "We're both fine, no thanks to you," I said, surprising myself with my directness. A complete stranger had to drive me to the hospital and stay with me through labor because my husband was unreachable. "Zara, I'm sorry, I just come to the hospital," I said and hung up. I looked down at my daughter, then up at Ethan, who had been quietly giving me space for the phone call but stayed close enough to offer support if I needed it. "Thank you," I said to him. "I don't know what I would have done without you tonight." "You would have managed," he said. "You're stronger than you know." But as I held my baby girl and thought about the man who had promised to love and protect us both, I realized that strength was something I was going to need a lot more of. Because the stranger who had answered my wrong number text had shown me what it looked like when someone actually cared. And now I finally understood what had been missing from my marriage all along. Ryan arrived at the hospital 3 hours later, looking like he had hastily thrown on yesterday's clothes. His hair was messy, his shirt was wrinkled, and he smelled like expensive perfume that definitely wasn't mine. "Where is she?" he asked, bursting into the room with the kind of dramatic energy that was supposed to make everyone forget he'd been absent for the most important night of our lives. I was holding our daughter, finally calm after the chaos of birth, and Ethan was sitting in the chair beside my bed, writing something in a notebook. He looked up when Ryan entered, and I saw him quickly assess my husband with the same professional attention he'd given me during labor. "Ryan," I said quietly, "meet your daughter." For a moment, Ryan's face softened as he looked at the baby in my arms. She's so small, he said, reaching out to touch her tiny hand. She's beautiful, Zara. Her name is Amara, I said. Amara Grace Coleman. Ryan nodded, though I could tell he wasn't really listening. His attention kept drifting to Ethan, clearly wondering who this man was and why he was still here. And you are? Ryan asked, extending his hand to Ethan in a gesture that seemed more territorial than friendly. Dr. Ethan Brooks, Ethan replied, standing to shake Ryan's hand. I helped get Zara to the hospital last night. I appreciate that, Ryan said, though his tone suggested anything but appreciation. But I'm here now, so... The dismissal was clear, but Ethan didn't seem bothered by it. He looked at me instead. I should go. You need time with your family. Wait, I said, shifting Amara carefully so I could reach into my purse. Let me get your phone number. I want to send you a thank you card and... I owe you for the hospital ride. You don't owe me anything, Ethan said. But I'd like to know how you and Amara are doing if that's okay. Ryan's jaw tightened as I exchanged numbers with Ethan. After Ethan left, the room felt different. Smaller. Tenser. So who exactly was that guy? Ryan asked, sitting in the chair Ethan had vacated. I told you. The person I accidentally texted when I couldn't reach you. I looked at him directly. Where were you last night, Ryan? I explained that. I was at the office working on the Henderson project. My phone was on silent. Until 5 a.m.? It was a big project, Zara. You know how demanding my job is. I studied my husband's face, looking for signs of the man I'd married 3 years ago. But all I could see were the little tells I'd been ignoring for months. The way he wouldn't meet my eyes when he talked about work. The defensiveness in his voice. The fact that he smelled like someone else's perfume at 8 in the morning. Ryan, I said carefully, when Ethan went upstairs to get my hospital bag, he mentioned seeing 2 wine glasses in our bedroom. Ryan's face went pale. 2 wine glasses? On your nightstand. Were you entertaining someone last night? Those were from earlier in the week. I forgot to take them downstairs. But his voice lacked conviction and he still couldn't look me in the eye. A nurse knocked and entered to check on Amara and me. While she worked, I watched Ryan pace the room, his phone buzzing constantly with text messages that he kept glancing at nervously. Popular morning, I observed. Just work stuff, he said quickly, silencing his phone. After the nurse left, I decided to stop dancing around the truth. Ryan, I need you to be honest with me. Are you having an affair? The question hung in the air between us like a physical thing. Ryan stopped pacing and turned to face me, and for a split second, I saw the truth written clearly on his face before he covered it with indignation. How can you ask me that? You just had our baby and you're accusing me of cheating? I'm asking because my husband disappeared the night I went into labor. Because there were wine glasses in our bedroom that he can't explain. Because he's been distant and secretive for months, and right now he smells like perfume. You're being paranoid, Zara. Pregnancy hormones make women think crazy things. The dismissive way he said it, the casual cruelty of reducing my very real concerns to pregnancy hormones, told me everything I needed to know. This was the man who had promised to love and cherish me, brushing off my questions like I was an hysterical child. His phone buzzed again. This time I was quick enough to see the name on the screen before he could hide it. Brittany Hart. His colleague. The same Brittany who had been working late on projects with him. The same Brittany who had been coming up in conversation more and more frequently over the past few months. Answer it, I said. What? Your phone. Answer it. If it's just work, answer it. Ryan stared at me, his phone still buzzing in his hand. It's not important. Then why does Brittany Hart think it's important enough to call you at 8 in the morning? The name hitting the air between us was like a confession. Ryan's shoulders sagged, and for the first time since he'd arrived, he looked genuinely defeated. Zara, I can explain. Don't. I held up my hand to stop him. Don't explain. Don't make excuses. Don't lie to me anymore. I looked down at Amara, sleeping peacefully in my arms, completely unaware that her world was falling apart before she was even 12 hours old. How long? I asked. It's not what you think. How long, Ryan? He sat down heavily, his head in his hands. 4 months. 4 months. I was 5 months pregnant when it started. His affair had been going on for most of my pregnancy while I was growing our daughter, planning our future, trusting him completely. Were you with her last night? He nodded without looking up. While I was in labor. While I was alone and scared and calling you for help. I didn't know you were in labor. Because you were too busy sleeping with someone else to answer your phone. The full weight of it hit me then. Not just the betrayal but the complete abdication of responsibility. While I was bringing his child into the world, he was in bed with another woman. "I want you to leave," I said quietly. "Zara, we can work this out." It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. "It meant something to me," I said. "It meant that when our daughter needed her father most, when I needed my husband most, you chose someone else. Please, let's talk about this at home. This is the conversation, Ryan. There won't be another one." I reached for my phone and found Ethan's number. I wasn't sure why I called him instead of my sister or my best friend, but somehow I knew he would understand what I needed. "Ethan? It's Zara. I know you just left, but could you come back? I need a favor." 20 minutes later, Ethan returned to find me packing my few belongings while Ryan sat in the corner, still trying to convince me to reconsider. "What do you need?" Ethan asked, ignoring Ryan completely. "Can you help me figure out where Amara and I can go when they discharge us?" "I can't go home." "You have a home," Ryan protested. "Our home." "Your home," I corrected. "Where you live with your girlfriend." Ethan's expression darkened as he understood the situation, but he kept his voice calm. "My sister has a guest room. It's quiet, safe, good for a baby. You can stay as long as you need." "Zara, you're not thinking clearly," Ryan said. "You can't just leave." I looked at my husband, this man who had promised to forsake all others, who had vowed to be there in sickness and in health, for better or worse. And I realized that I barely recognized him anymore. "Watch me," I said. 6 months later, I was standing in my own apartment, holding Amara while she gurgled happily at the afternoon sunlight streaming through our living room windows. It was a small place, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Mine and Amara's. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. The apartment was on the second floor of a converted house in a quiet neighborhood, with hardwood floors that creaked when I walked and built-in bookshelves that I'd filled with design books and baby pictures. I'd painted the walls myself while Amara napped, choosing soft blues and warm creams that made the space feel calm and hopeful. My design business was growing faster than I'd expected. Working from home while caring for Amara was challenging, but having creative control over my work again felt like coming back to life. I'd started with small projects, logos for local businesses, brochures for community organizations. Word of mouth had led to bigger clients, and now I was designing full branding packages for startups and established companies. The divorce papers had been finalized last month. Ryan had fought for shared custody at first, but his commitment to fatherhood proved as unreliable as his commitment to marriage. He'd missed 3 scheduled visits with Amara and canceled 2 others at the last minute. When his lawyer suggested supervised visits, Ryan decided it wasn't worth the hassle. He signed away his parental rights in exchange for no child support obligations, which was fine with me. I'd rather support Amara myself than have her depend on someone who saw her as an inconvenience. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. I checked the peephole and smiled when I saw Ethan standing on my doorstep, holding a coffee carrier and a paper bag that smelled like fresh pastries. "Coffee delivery," he announced when I opened the door. "And I brought those muffins Amara likes to gum on." "She's 6 months old," I laughed, taking Amara from the bouncy seat where she'd been playing. "She doesn't have teeth yet." "Details," Ethan said, setting the coffee and bag on my kitchen counter. "How's my favorite girl doing today?" He was talking to Amara, who immediately reached for him with both chubby arms. Watching Ethan with my daughter never failed to warm my heart. He'd been a constant presence in our lives since that first night at the hospital, and Amara had learned to associate his voice with safety and fun. "She's been babbling all morning," I said, handing her over to him. "I swear she's trying to say Dada, but she keeps looking at you when she does it." Ethan's face went soft in a way that made my chest tight. "Is that right, little one? Are you trying to talk?" Over the past 6 months, Ethan and I had developed an easy friendship built on mutual respect and genuine care for each other's well-being. He'd helped me find this apartment, had been there when I needed someone to watch Amara during important client meetings, and had become the kind of friend I could call at any hour with questions, concerns, or just to talk. But lately I'd been noticing things. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The way his hand lingered when he passed me my coffee. The way he'd started finding excuses to spend time at our apartment even when I didn't need help with anything. And if I was being honest with myself, I'd been noticing the way my heart sped up when I heard his voice, the way I found myself looking forward to his visits more than I probably should, the way I felt safer and happier when he was around. "How was your day?" I asked, settling onto the couch while he bounced Amara on his knee. "Busy. 3 car accidents, 1 heart attack, and a kid who decided to see if he could fit his head through the banister rails." Could he? Getting in wasn't the problem. Ethan grinned. Getting out required some creative problem solving and a lot of dish soap. I laughed, enjoying the easy way Ethan could make me smile. It had been so long since I'd been around someone who approached life with such genuine warmth and humor. Speaking of creative problem solving, I said, I got a call today about a potential big client. Sterling and Associates. They want to rebrand completely, and they're looking for someone to handle everything from logo design to website development. That sounds huge, Ethan said, his attention fully focused on me. How do you feel about it? Excited. Terrified. It would mean hiring subcontractors, maybe eventually hiring employees. It would change everything. Change can be good, he said quietly. You've already changed so much in the past 6 months. Look at what you've built here. I looked around my small apartment, at the evidence of the life I'd created from nothing. My design studio set up in the corner with 2 monitors and a drawing tablet. Amara's play area with soft mats and colorful toys. Pictures on the walls of our new life, our small family of 2. I never thought I could do this alone, I admitted. Before Amara was born, I was so dependent on Ryan for everything. Financial decisions, major choices, even small day-to-day things. I thought I needed someone else to make me complete. You were never incomplete, Ethan said firmly. You just needed to remember how strong you already were. The way he said it, with such certainty and conviction, made me believe him. This man who had seen me at my most vulnerable, who had watched me rebuild my entire life from the ground up, who had never once made me feel like I wasn't enough exactly as I was. Amara had fallen asleep in his arms, her little fist curled around his finger. The sight of them together did something to my heart that I wasn't quite ready to examine too closely. I should put her down for her nap, I said, reaching for her. I can do it, Ethan offered, standing carefully so as not to wake her. I led him to Amara's room, watching as he gently placed her in her crib and covered her with the soft yellow blanket his sister had knitted for her. He moved with such natural care, such tenderness, that it was hard to remember this wasn't his daughter, that he had no obligation to either of us beyond friendship. Back in the living room, we settled onto the couch with our coffee, and I found myself studying his profile as he looked out the window. Ethan, I said, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you answer that text? I mean, really? Most people would have ignored a wrong number message, especially at midnight. He was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. I almost did ignore it, he said finally. But something about the way you wrote it, the urgency, made me think it was real. That someone really needed help. And you just decided to help a complete stranger? I decided to help someone who needed help. The stranger part didn't seem important. I looked at this man who had changed the entire course of my life with one act of kindness, and I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been healing and growing over the past 6 months was finally ready to be acknowledged. I need to tell you something, I said, my heart racing. These past 6 months, having you in our lives, it's meant everything to me. You've shown me what it looks like when someone actually cares, when someone shows up, when someone puts your needs and your child's needs before their own convenience. Ethan turned to look at me directly, his brown eyes serious. I think I'm falling in love with you, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. And that terrifies me because I just got out of a marriage where I lost myself completely, and I swore I'd never depend on someone else for my happiness again. But with you, it doesn't feel like dependence. Feels like partnership. Like we make each other stronger. The silence stretched between us, and for a moment I worried I'd ruined everything, that I'd misread the situation completely. Then Ethan reached over and took my hand in his. I've been in love with you since the night Amara was born, he said quietly. Watching you be so strong, so brave, so completely devoted to your daughter even when everything was falling apart around you. But I didn't want to complicate your life when you were trying to rebuild it. I wanted you to know that you could do it on your own first. And now? I asked, hardly daring to breathe. Now I think we've both learned that being strong doesn't mean being alone, he said, bringing my hand to his lips and pressing a gentle kiss to my knuckles. And I'd like to find out what we could build together if you're willing to try. I leaned forward and kissed him, soft and tentative at first, then with growing confidence as he responded. It felt like coming home to a place I'd never been before, like finding something I hadn't even known I was looking for. When we broke apart, I rested my forehead against his. I want to try, I said. But I need us to take this slow. Amara has to come first, and I need to make sure I'm making decisions from a place of strength, not need. Whatever pace you need, Ethan said. I'm not going anywhere. That night, after Ethan had gone home and Amara was sleeping peacefully in her crib, I sat at my computer working on a new client proposal and thinking about how much my life had changed. 6 months ago, I'd been a woman so dependent on her husband that I couldn't imagine making a single decision without him. Tonight, I was a successful business owner, a devoted mother, and a woman who had chosen love from a place of wholeness rather than desperation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Heard through the grapevine that you're doing well. We should talk, Ryan. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Whatever Ryan wanted to say, whatever explanation or apology or attempt at reconciliation he might be planning, I wasn't interested. I'd built a new life, and there was no room in it for people who had already proven they couldn't be trusted with my heart. Instead, I texted Ethan, "Thank you for today. For everything. Sweet dreams." His response came quickly, "Thank you for taking a chance on us. Sleep well, beautiful." As I got ready for bed, I thought about the wrong number text that had changed everything. Sometimes the universe has a way of putting exactly the right person in your path at exactly the right moment. Sometimes what looks like a mistake turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. And sometimes, the person who shows up when everyone else disappears is the person who was meant to be there all along. 3 weeks after Ethan and I had finally acknowledged our feelings for each other, Ryan appeared at my door like a bad penny. I was feeding Amara her lunch when I heard the familiar sound of his car in my driveway, the same BMW he'd bought to celebrate his promotion last year. Through the window, I watched him sit in his car for several minutes, checking his appearance in the rearview mirror and practicing what looked like a speech. Finally, he got out and walked to my door with the confident stride I remembered from when we first met, back when I thought his confidence meant strength. "Zara," he said when I opened the door, not bothering with a greeting. "You look good. Really good." I did look good and I knew it. The stress weight I'd carried during the last months of our marriage had melted away, replaced by the natural energy that came from being happy. My skin was clearer, my eyes were brighter, and I carried myself differently now. Like a woman who knew her own worth. "What do you want, Ryan?" I asked, not inviting him in. "Can I come in? I'd like to see Amara." "You signed away your parental rights," I reminded him. "You chose to give up the right to see her." "I made a mistake," he said, running his hand through his hair in the gesture I used to find endearing. I was confused, overwhelmed. I wasn't thinking clearly. "You were thinking clearly enough to choose Brittany over your wife and daughter." Ryan flinched at the direct hit. "Can we please not do this on your doorstep?" "5 minutes, Zara. Just give me 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let him in. Amara was in her high chair, cheerfully smearing sweet potato all over her face, and when she saw Ryan, she stopped eating and stared at him with the curious expression she reserved for strangers. "She's gotten so big," Ryan said softly, approaching her carefully. "Hi, sweetheart. Do you remember Daddy?" But Amara turned away from him and reached for me, making it clear that she didn't remember him at all. The man who should have been the most important person in her world was nothing more than an unfamiliar face. "She doesn't know you," I said, lifting her from the high chair and wiping her face clean. "You've seen her exactly twice since she was born." "That's what I want to change," Ryan said, his voice taking on the earnest tone he used when he wanted something. "I want to be part of her life. Part of your life." I stared at him in genuine disbelief. "Are you serious right now?" "I ended things with Brittany," he said, as if that fixed everything. "It was a mistake from the beginning. She meant nothing to me. But she meant enough for you to miss the birth of your daughter." "I've been going to therapy," he continued, ignoring my comment. "I've been working on myself, trying to understand why I sabotaged the best thing in my life." "The best thing in your life," I repeated slowly. "Ryan, you called my design work a hobby. You made me feel like I was nothing more than an accessory to your success. You disappeared every time I needed you, long before Brittany came into the picture." "I know I wasn't the husband you deserved," he said. "But I can change. I have changed." "Good for you," I said. "I hope that makes your next relationship healthier." "Zara, please. I love you. I love Amara. We're a family." "No," I said firmly. "We were a family. Then you chose to destroy that family. Amara and I are a family now. You're just someone we used to know." Ryan's confident facade cracked slightly. "You can't mean that." "I absolutely mean that. Ryan, you had 9 months to prepare for fatherhood, and you spent the last 4 of those months cheating on me. You had countless opportunities to be the partner and father we needed, and you chose yourself every single time. People make mistakes, Zara. Mistakes are forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. Having an affair while your wife is pregnant and then missing the birth of your child because you're with your girlfriend isn't a mistake. It's a choice. A series of choices. Amara was getting fussy, picking up on the tension in the room. I bounced her gently, and she settled against my shoulder with the trust that comes from knowing someone will always be there for you. I heard you're seeing someone, Ryan said, his voice taking on an edge. Some doctor. That's none of your business. It is if he's around my daughter. Your daughter? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Ryan, you voluntarily gave up all rights to her. You have no say in who's around her, where she lives, what school she goes to, or any other aspect of her life. That was your choice. I was hurt and angry when I signed those papers. I wasn't thinking straight. You were thinking straight enough to negotiate out of paying child support. That silenced him for a moment. We both knew that his decision to give up his rights had been primarily financial, a way to avoid the responsibility of supporting the child he'd helped create. I want to fight for you, he said finally. For us. There is no us, Ryan. There hasn't been an us since the moment you decided another woman was more important than your pregnant wife. So that's it? You're just going to throw away 3 years of marriage? I didn't throw it away, I said, my voice rising slightly. You did. When you started lying to me. When you started coming home late every night. When you made me feel like I was crazy for noticing the changes in you. When you chose to be with Brittany instead of being there for the birth of your child. Zara. I'm done, Ryan. I'm done explaining this to you, done justifying my decisions, done pretending that what you did was somehow my fault or something we can work through. I walked to the front door and opened it. You need to leave now. This isn't over, he said, but he moved toward the door. Yes, it is, I said. It's been over for 8 months. You're just the last one to figure it out. After he left, I sat on my couch holding Amara, my hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline of confrontation. But underneath the shakiness was something solid and strong. I had stood my ground. I had protected my daughter and myself. I had refused to be manipulated by someone who had already proven he couldn't be trusted. My phone rang and I saw Ethan's name on the screen. Hey, I said, accepting the call. Hey yourself. How are you doing? You sound stressed. Ryan stopped by, I said. He wants to reconcile. There was a pause. How do you feel about that? Like I dodged a bullet by getting away from him when I did, I said. Ethan, he looked at Amara like she was a stranger. Because she is a stranger to him. And then he had the nerve to talk about wanting to be a family again. Are you okay? I'm better than okay, I realized as I said it. I'm proud of myself. 6 months ago, I would have listened to his apologies and promises. I might have even believed them. But now, I know what I deserve. I know what Amara deserves. You deserve everything good, Ethan said quietly. Both of you do. When are you coming over tonight? I asked, needing to focus on something positive. Is 7 still good? I was thinking we could cook dinner together. Amara can supervise from her bouncy seat. Perfect, I said, already feeling the tension leaving my shoulders. I love you. I love you too, he said. Both of you. After we hung up, I looked down at Amara, who was playing with the buttons on my shirt and babbling contentedly. Your daddy thinks he can just walk back into our lives, I told her. But he doesn't understand that we've already found our family. Haven't we, sweet girl? Amara gurgled and smiled at me, and I knew I'd made the right choice. Some people get second chances because they've earned them. Others get second chances because the people they hurt are too kind or too scared to enforce boundaries. But some people don't get second chances at all, because the people they hurt have learned that their peace is worth more than someone else's redemption story. Ryan could work on himself all he wanted. He could go to therapy and end his affair and promise to change. But he'd already shown me who he was when it mattered most, and I believed him the first time. 2 weeks after Ryan's unexpected visit, I was served with legal papers while I was at the grocery store with Amara. The process server was polite but firm, handing me a thick envelope and asking me to confirm my identity before walking away. I sat in my car in the parking lot, Amara babbling happily in her car seat, and read through documents that made my blood pressure spike. Ryan was petitioning the court to reverse his voluntary termination of parental rights. He wanted joint custody, claiming he had been emotionally compromised when he signed the papers and didn't understand the permanence of his decision. The petition painted me as an unfit mother who had alienated him from his daughter and was now living with an unmarried man in an unstable environment. It requested that the court award him standard visitation immediately and full joint custody within 6 months. I called my lawyer, Jennifer Santos, from the parking lot. He can't do this, can he? I asked after explaining the situation. He can petition, Jennifer said carefully. Whether he'll be successful is another matter entirely. The court takes voluntary termination of parental rights very seriously. He'll need to prove that his decision was made under duress or that circumstances have changed dramatically enough to warrant reversal. What does this mean for me and Amara? It means we need to document everything. Every missed visit, every late or absent child support payment before he terminated his rights, every instance where he chose his own interests over Amara's well-being. He never paid child support, I said. That was part of the agreement when he gave up his rights. Even better. We'll also need character witnesses, evidence of your stable home environment, and documentation of Amara's current care situation. Does she have a regular pediatrician? Yes, Dr. Kim. She's been seeing her since birth. Good. I'll need medical records showing consistent care. What about childcare? I work from home, but when I have client meetings, either my neighbor Mrs. Peterson watches her or... I hesitated. Or my boyfriend Ethan. He's the doctor who helped me the night she was born. The unmarried man mentioned in the petition? Yes. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Zara, I need to be direct with you. Ryan's lawyer is going to try to paint your relationship with Ethan as harmful to Amara's stability. They'll argue that you moved on too quickly, that you're prioritizing your romantic life over your daughter's need for her biological father. That's ridiculous, I said, feeling anger rise in my chest. Ethan has been more of a father to Amara than Ryan ever was. I believe you, but we need to prove it. Can Ethan provide documentation of his involvement in Amara's care? Pediatric visits he's attended, emergencies he's helped with, that sort of thing? Yes, I said, thinking of all the times Ethan had been there when Amara was sick, all the bedtime stories he'd read her, all the ways he'd seamlessly become part of our daily routine. Good. We'll need that. We'll also need to demonstrate that Ryan's absence was voluntary and detrimental to Amara's well-being. That evening, Ethan found me at my kitchen table surrounded by legal documents, bank statements, and a timeline I'd been creating of Ryan's behavior during my pregnancy and after Amara's birth. How bad is it? He asked, settling into the chair beside me. Jennifer thinks we have a strong case, but Ryan's playing dirty. He's claiming I'm an unfit mother because we're living together unmarried. Ethan's jaw tightened. We're not living together. I have my own apartment. But you're here most evenings. You help with Amara's bedtime routine. You have a key for emergencies. To the court, that might look like cohabitation. Do you want me to step back? Ethan asked quietly. If my being part of your lives is going to hurt you in court. No, I said immediately. Absolutely not. I won't let Ryan manipulate me into pushing away the people who actually care about us. Then we fight, Ethan said simply. We document everything, we tell the truth, and we trust that the court will see Ryan for what he is. Over the next month, we prepared for battle. Jennifer helped me compile evidence of Ryan's abandonment, phone records showing my unanswered calls during labor, medical records documenting that he wasn't present for Amara's birth, testimony from nurses who remembered the night a stranger had to drive me to the hospital because my husband was unreachable. Dr. Kim provided a detailed report on Amara's excellent health and development, noting my consistent attendance at all appointments and the presence of a male caregiver who demonstrates appropriate attachment and caregiving behaviors at several visits. Mrs. Peterson, my elderly neighbor, wrote a letter describing how she'd watched me transform from a scared new mother to a confident parent, and how she'd observed Ethan's gentle, attentive interactions with Amara over the past several months. My business records showed steady income growth and financial stability. Bank statements proved I'd been supporting Amara entirely on my own since her birth. But Ryan had been busy too. His lawyer had assembled character references from colleagues, evidence of his improved financial situation since his promotion, and documentation of his completion of a parenting class and therapy sessions. The court hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in November. I wore my most professional outfit and carried a folder of evidence that represented 8 months of being a devoted single mother. Ryan looked confident and well prepared, sitting at his lawyer's table in an expensive suit. I noticed he kept glancing at me and Ethan, who had taken the day off work to support me. Your Honor, Ryan's lawyer began, my client made a rash decision during a difficult time in his life. He was overwhelmed by new parenthood and made the tragic mistake of walking away from his responsibilities. But he's worked hard to address his issues and is now ready to be the father his daughter deserves. The lawyer painted a picture of Ryan as a reformed man who had simply needed time to mature into fatherhood. They argued that Amara would benefit from having her biological father in her life and that my relationship with Ethan was confusing for a young child who needed stability. When it was Jennifer's turn, she methodically destroyed their narrative. Your Honor, Mr. Coleman didn't make a rash decision during a difficult time. He made a calculated decision to prioritize his affair over his pregnant wife and newborn daughter. The evidence shows a pattern of abandonment that began during the pregnancy and culminated in his absence during labor and delivery. She presented the phone records, the hospital documentation, the testimony from medical staff. She showed the court that Ryan had missed multiple scheduled visits with Amara after signing the custody agreement, proving that his interest in fatherhood was inconsistent at best. Ms. Coleman has provided excellent care for her daughter as a single mother, Jennifer continued. She's financially stable, emotionally available, and has created a safe, loving home environment. The presence of Dr. Brooks, a licensed physician who has been a consistent, positive figure in the child's life, adds to that stability rather than detracting from it. When I was called to testify, I spoke clearly about the night Amara was born, about Ryan's pattern of absence during my pregnancy, about the choice he made to sign away his rights rather than pay child support. Ms. Coleman, Ryan's lawyer asked during cross-examination, isn't it true that you began a romantic relationship very quickly after your divorce? I began a friendship with Dr. Brooks the night my daughter was born, when he answered my cry for help and my husband did not, I said. Our romantic relationship developed slowly over several months, built on mutual respect and shared commitment to my daughter's well-being. And you don't think it's confusing for a child to have a man in her life who isn't her biological father? What I think is confusing for a child is having a biological father who disappears for months at a time and then tries to return when it's convenient for him, I said. Dr. Brooks has been a consistent, loving presence in Amara's life. He's earned his place in our family. When Ethan testified, he spoke about his role in Amara's life with quiet conviction. I don't claim to be her father, he said, but I love her as if she were my own daughter. I've been there for every doctor's appointment I could attend, every sleepless night when she was sick, every milestone. I consider her well-being one of my primary responsibilities. Even though you have no legal obligation to this child? Ryan's lawyer pressed. Love doesn't require legal obligation, Ethan replied. It requires showing up. The judge took a week to make her decision. When we returned to court, she looked directly at Ryan as she spoke. Mr. Coleman, your decision to voluntarily terminate your parental rights was made freely and with full understanding of the consequences. The court finds no evidence of duress or legal incompetence at the time you signed those documents. Ryan's face went pale. Furthermore, the judge continued, the evidence presented shows a pattern of absence and abandonment that began during the pregnancy and continued after the child's birth. Ms. Coleman has demonstrated exceptional parenting during your absence and has created a stable, loving environment for the child. The judge's voice took on a stern tone. Mr. Coleman, you cannot treat parental rights like a revolving door, walking away when parenthood is inconvenient and returning when you decide you're ready. The best interests of the child require stability and consistency, qualities you have not demonstrated. The petition to reinstate parental rights is denied. I felt Ethan's hand squeeze mine as relief flooded through me. It was over. Amara and I were safe. As we left the courthouse, Ryan caught up with us in the parking lot. This isn't over, Zara, he said, his face twisted with anger and humiliation. Yes, it is, I said calmly. It's been over since the night you chose Brittany over your family. Now it's legally over too. I got into Ethan's car with Amara, and we drove away from the courthouse toward our real life, our chosen family, our future. Sometimes justice isn't about punishment. Sometimes it's simply about protecting the innocent and letting the truth speak for itself. Winter settled over our small town like a comfortable blanket, and with it came a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The legal battle was behind us, my business was thriving, and Amara was growing into a happy, curious 10-month-old who had started pulling herself up on furniture and babbling in what sounded almost like conversations. Ethan had become such a natural part of our daily routine that it was hard to remember what life had been like without him. He had a drawer in my dresser now, a toothbrush in my bathroom, and a favorite mug that Amara had claimed by constantly trying to grab it during breakfast. She's going to walk any day now, Ethan said one Saturday morning as we watched Amara cruise along the coffee table, her little hands gripping the edge for support. I'm not ready, I said, though I was smiling. Once she's mobile, everything changes. Everything's been changing since the day she was born, Ethan pointed out. And look how well you've handled it all. We were spending the weekend at Ethan's sister Rebecca's house, having dinner with her family and finally meeting the woman who had offered us shelter during those first difficult weeks after Amara's birth. Rebecca was warm and funny, with Ethan's same kind eyes and an easy way with children that made Amara take to her immediately. "So you're the famous Zara," Rebecca said as she helped me in the kitchen while the men grilled burgers outside. "Ethan talks about you constantly." "Good things, I hope," I said, tossing the salad. "The best things. He lights up when he talks about you and Amara. I haven't seen him this happy since, well, maybe ever." "He makes me happy too," I said, watching through the window as Ethan held Amara while she reached for snowflakes. "I never expected to find someone like him." "Can I ask you something personal?" Rebecca said, her tone gentle. "Of course. Are you planning to have more children? With Ethan?" The question caught me off guard, though I realized I'd been thinking about it more and more lately. "We haven't really talked about it," I said. "Everything happened so fast between us, and we've been focused on building our relationship and making sure Amara felt secure." "But you want more kids?" "I think so," I said slowly. "I love being a mother. And I think Ethan would be an amazing father." "He already is," Rebecca said simply. "Biology doesn't make someone a parent. Love and commitment do." That evening, after Amara was asleep in the portable crib we'd brought, Ethan and I walked through Rebecca's neighborhood, holding hands and talking about everything and nothing. "Your sister asked me about kids today," I said. "Future kids." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "What did you tell her?" "That we haven't talked about it. But maybe we should." "I'd love to have children with you," Ethan said without hesitation. "I'd love to give Amara siblings to build a big, chaotic, happy family with you. But..." I could hear the hesitation in his voice. "But only if that's what you want. You've already proven you can handle anything life throws at you. You don't need me to complete your family." I stopped walking and turned to face him. "Ethan, I didn't fall in love with you because I needed you to complete my family. I fell in love with you because you made our family better. There's a difference." "Is there?" he asked, his breath visible in the cold air. "With Ryan, I felt like I disappeared into the relationship. Like I became smaller so he could feel bigger. With you, I feel like I become more myself. More confident, more capable, more sure of what I want." "And what do you want?" "I want to marry you," I said, surprising myself with the directness of it. "I want to have babies with you. I want to build something beautiful and lasting and real." Ethan's face broke into the kind of smile that made me understand why people wrote poetry about love. "Are you proposing to me, Zara Coleman?" "Maybe I am," I said, laughing. "Is that okay?" Instead of answering, he kissed me in the middle of the snowy street, and I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. 3 months later, we were engaged officially, with a simple but beautiful ring that Ethan had chosen with input from Amara, who had apparently pointed at it with great enthusiasm during their shopping trip to the jewelry store. The proposal itself was perfectly us, quiet, intimate, and centered around our little family. Ethan had planned a picnic in the park where we'd taken Amara for walks throughout our relationship. While she played on a blanket surrounded by toys, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him with words that made me cry and laugh at the same time. "Zara, you and Amara saved my life in ways you don't even know. You taught me what it means to love without conditions, to show up without being asked, to choose family every single day. Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of the gift you've given me?" The answer was yes, of course. It had been yes since the night he answered a wrong number text and changed the course of all our lives. We set the wedding date for late summer, wanting to give ourselves time to plan something meaningful but not wanting to wait too long to start our official life together. Ryan had been notably absent from our lives since the court decision, though I occasionally heard through mutual acquaintances that he was dating someone new, a younger woman who apparently didn't mind his complicated history. I felt nothing when I heard these updates. Not anger, not jealousy, not even satisfaction. Just a kind of peaceful indifference that told me I'd truly moved on. Ryan was part of my past, a chapter that had led me to where I needed to be, but he had no power over my present or future. My business continued to grow, and I'd hired 2 part-time contractors to help with the increased workload. I was making more money than I'd ever dreamed possible, and more importantly, I was doing work I loved while being present for Amara's daily life. "I have something to tell you," I said to Ethan one evening as we cleaned up after dinner. "Good something or concerning something?" "Good something," I said, grinning. "Sterling and Associates wants to put me on retainer. Steady monthly income, first right of refusal on all their design needs, plus bonuses for major projects." "Zara, that's incredible." Ethan picked me up and spun me around the kitchen while Amara clapped from her high chair. "It means we could buy a house," I said when he put me down. "A real house with a yard for Amara to play in and room for future additions to our family." "Future additions?" Ethan's eyes lit up. I went to see Dr. Martinez yesterday, I said, for my annual appointment. And I asked her about birth control. And I asked her to remove my IUD. Ethan's face went through several emotions at once. Surprise, joy, hope, and something that looked like love so pure it took my breath away. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I'm ready, I said. Ready to try for another baby, ready to buy a house, ready to build the life we've been dreaming about. That night, as we lay in bed with Amara sleeping peacefully in her crib nearby, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From the darkest night of my life to this moment of perfect contentment and hopeful anticipation. Thank you, I whispered to Ethan in the darkness. For what? For answering your phone that night. For showing up. For staying. Thank you for sending that text to the wrong number, he whispered back. Best mistake ever made. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized it hadn't been a mistake at all. Sometimes what looks like an accident is actually the universe conspiring to give you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. Sometimes the wrong number turns out to be exactly the right call. Spring arrived early that year, bringing with it a sense of renewal and possibility that seemed to mirror the changes in our lives. Ethan and I had found a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools, a large backyard perfect for children, and enough space for my growing business. Amara was walking now, toddling around on chubby legs and chattering in her own language that we were getting better at interpreting. We'd been trying for another baby for 3 months with no success yet, but Dr. Martinez had assured us that was completely normal and to just enjoy the process. Which we definitely were. I was in my new home office, working on a branding package for a local restaurant, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Zara Coleman Design, I answered professionally. Zara? It's Patricia. Ryan's mother. I hadn't spoken to her since before the divorce, and hearing her voice brought back a mix of complicated emotions. Patricia, I said carefully. How can I help you? I was wondering if we could meet for coffee. I'd like to talk to you about Ryan and about my granddaughter. The word, granddaughter, hit me like a slap. Patricia had never once reached out after Amara was born, had never asked to meet her or even sent a card acknowledging her existence. Patricia, Ryan gave up his parental rights. That was his choice and the court upheld it. I know, she said quickly. I'm not trying to interfere with that decision. I've been thinking a lot about family lately and I made some mistakes. I'd like to talk to you about them. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her the next day at a coffee shop downtown. I arranged for Mrs. Peterson to watch Amara, not wanting to expose my daughter to whatever drama Patricia might be planning. She was already seated when I arrived, looking older than I remembered and somehow smaller. The woman who had once intimidated me with her perfectly coordinated outfits and sharp comments now seemed uncertain, almost fragile. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, I said honestly. What did you want to talk about? Patricia stirred her coffee nervously before meeting my eyes. I want to apologize. For how I treated you during your marriage, for not supporting you during the divorce, and most of all, for not being there when my granddaughter was born. The apology surprised me. Patricia had never been one to admit fault or show vulnerability. Ryan told us he didn't want children, she continued. He said you were pressuring him into having a baby he wasn't ready for. So when you got pregnant, I thought you had trapped him somehow. Trapped him? I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. I know how it sounds now. But Ryan has always been good at making himself look like the victim, and I wanted to believe my son could do no wrong. What changed your mind? Patricia's face tightened with what looked like shame. I ran into your friend Lisa at the grocery store last month. She told me about the night Amara was born. About how you were alone, calling for help, and Ryan was... She couldn't finish the sentence. With Brittany, I finished for her. I confronted Ryan about it. He admitted everything. The affair, missing the birth, lying to us about the circumstances of the divorce. I realized I'd been defending someone who didn't deserve defending, and I'd lost the chance to know my granddaughter in the process. I studied Patricia's face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda, but all I saw was genuine regret. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she said. I'm just asking if there's any way I could meet her. Maybe build some kind of relationship with her, separate from whatever happened between you and Ryan. Patricia, I said gently, I appreciate your apology and I believe you're sincere. But Amara is my priority. She has a stable, happy life with people who love her unconditionally. I can't risk disrupting that for a relationship that might disappear if you and Ryan have another falling out. I understand, she said, though I could see the disappointment in her eyes. Can I at least ask how she's doing? What she's like? For the next 20 minutes, I found myself sharing stories about Amara's first steps, her favorite foods, the way she laughed when Ethan made funny faces at her. Patricia listened with the hungry attention of someone trying to fill a void they'd created themselves. She sounds wonderful, Patricia said when I finished. She sounds happy. She is happy, I said. She's surrounded by people who chose to love her, who show up for her every day. Including Dr. Brooks? Especially Dr. Brooks, I said firmly. He's been more of a father to her than Ryan ever was. Patricia nodded slowly. I'm glad she has that. I'm glad you both have that. As we prepared to leave, she handed me a small wrapped package. I know I don't have the right to give her presents, but I saw this and I couldn't help myself. Inside was a beautiful children's book about a little girl who goes on adventures with her family. The inscription read, "For Amara, with love from Grandma Patricia. I hope someday we can meet." Patricia, I said looking at the book, I can't promise anything. But if you're serious about wanting to be part of her life, it has to be on my terms. No pressure, no demands, no trying to push Ryan back into the picture. I understand, she said quickly. Whatever you're comfortable with. I'll think about it, I said, which was more than I'd expected to offer when I arrived. That evening, I told Ethan about the meeting while we gave Amara her bath. How do you feel about it? He asked, helping Amara splash in the bubbles. Confused, I admitted. Part of me thinks she deserves a chance to know Amara. But part of me worries this is some kind of setup, or that she'll change her mind again if Ryan decides he wants back in. What does your gut tell you? That she was genuinely sorry. But also that I need to protect Amara from getting attached to someone who might disappear. We could start small, Ethan suggested. Maybe supervised visits here at the house. See how it goes. I was still considering Patricia's request when Ryan forced the decision for me. 3 days later, I was at the park with Amara when I noticed a familiar car parked across the street. Ryan was sitting behind the wheel watching us play. When he saw that I'd spotted him, he got out and walked toward the playground. Zara, he called out. Wait. I picked up Amara and started walking toward my car, but Ryan jogged to catch up with us. Please, just talk to me for a minute. I have nothing to say to you, Ryan. And you have no right to follow us around. I know you met with my mother, he said. She told me about your conversation. So I think she's right. Amara deserves to know her family. Her real family. She knows her real family, I said, reaching my car and opening the door to put Amara in her car seat. Her real family is the people who love her and take care of her every day. I'm her father, Zara? No, I said, turning to face him. You're the man who contributed sperm to her conception. Ethan is her father in every way that matters. Ryan's face darkened. That's not legal and you know it. Actually, it is legal. The court already settled this, remember? You have no parental rights, no legal standing, and no claim to her. I could petition again. I could take you back to court. Go ahead, I said, surprising him with my calm response. Take me to court again. Explain to the judge why you're now following us around and harassing us after voluntarily giving up your rights. See how that works out for you. I've changed, Zara. I'm in therapy, I'm doing the work. Good for you. Do the work for yourself, not because you think it entitles you to a relationship with the daughter you abandoned. I got into my car and drove away, leaving Ryan standing in the parking lot. But I could see in my rearview mirror that he was taking pictures of my license plate with his phone. That night, I called Jennifer Santos. He's escalating, I told her after describing the park incident. I'm worried about what he might do next. Document everything, Jennifer advised. Keep a record of every time he approaches you, follows you, or tries to contact you. If he continues this behavior, we can get a restraining order. What about Patricia? If I let her see Amara, will that complicate things legally? Not if you set clear boundaries and document everything. But be careful. Family courts sometimes view grandparent relationships as beneficial to children, even when the parent has given up rights. The next morning, Ryan's behavior became even more concerning. I found him parked outside my house when I left for a client meeting, and he followed me to the coffee shop where I was meeting my client. He didn't approach us, but his presence was clearly meant to intimidate me. I called Ethan from the parking lot after my meeting. He's trying to make me feel unsafe, I said. He's trying to disrupt my work, my routine, my peace of mind. Come to the hospital, Ethan said immediately. Bring Amara. Stay here until I get off shift and then we'll figure out what to do next. I'm not going to let him control my life like this. You're not letting him control anything. You're being smart and keeping yourself and Amara safe while we handle this legally. That afternoon, while Amara napped in the break room at the hospital and I worked on my laptop, Ethan found time between patients to sit with me. I've been thinking about Patricia, I said. Maybe if I give her supervised visits, it will show the court that I'm not trying to keep Amara from her extended family. And maybe Patricia can help keep Ryan in check. Are you sure? No, I said honestly. But I think it's worth trying. Patricia seemed genuinely sorry, and Amara could benefit from having more family who love her. As long as they understand that Ethan and I make the decisions about her welfare. We'll set strict boundaries, Ethan agreed. And the first sign of manipulation or drama, we shut it down. We. I smiled at him. I love how you always say, we, when it comes to Amara. Because it is we, he said simply. In every way that matters, we're her parents. And we'll protect her together. That evening I called Patricia. I've been thinking about what you said, I told her. And I'm willing to let you meet Amara under certain conditions. Anything, Patricia said quickly. Visits will be supervised by me or Ethan, in our home or in public places we choose. You don't take pictures without permission, you don't try to turn these visits into ammunition for Ryan to use in court, and the minute I feel like you're trying to manipulate the situation, they stop. I understand. And Patricia? If Ryan shows up or tries to use your relationship with Amara to get access to her, I'll cut contact immediately. Her safety and stability come first, always. Of course. Zara, I just want to know my granddaughter. That's all. We'll start with one visit next week. If it goes well, we can talk about making it a regular thing. After I hung up, I realized I was taking a calculated risk. But sometimes building the family your child deserves means taking chances on people who are willing to do better, even if they've failed before. And sometimes, the best way to protect your child from someone who wants to cause chaos is to surround them with so much love and stability that chaos can't take root. The community center was buzzing with activity as I set up my display booth for the annual Small Business Expo. This was my first year participating, and I was excited to showcase my design work to potential clients. I'd spent weeks preparing a portfolio of my best projects, business cards with my new logo, and a banner that proclaimed, Zara Coleman Design, bringing your vision to life. Amara was with Ethan at his sister's house for the day, giving me the freedom to focus on networking and promoting my business. The expo was exactly the kind of opportunity I dreamed about when I first started freelancing again, a chance to establish myself as a serious professional in the community. Your display looks fantastic, said Maria Santos, the owner of the bakery next to my booth. I love the clean lines and the way you've arranged everything. Very professional. Thank you, I said, adjusting the arrangement of my portfolio samples. I'm nervous but excited. This is my first time doing something like this. You'll do great. I can already see people stopping to look at your work. She was right. Throughout the morning, I had steady traffic at my booth. Business owners stopped to flip through my portfolio, and several left their cards with requests for follow-up consultations. I was in the middle of discussing a potential website redesign with a local attorney when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Excuse me, are you Zara Coleman? I turned to see a middle-aged woman with a notepad and press badge. Yes, I'm Zara. Are you with the local paper? Sarah Mitchell from the Business Journal. I'm doing a feature on emerging entrepreneurs in the area. Could I ask you a few questions about your business? Of course, I said, thrilled at the unexpected opportunity for press coverage. Tell me about your company. How did you get started? I launched into my story, explaining how I'd started freelancing from home after becoming a single mother, how my business had grown through word-of-mouth referrals, and how I'd recently landed several major clients including Sterling and Associates. That's quite an inspiring story, Sarah said, taking notes. Starting over as a single mother couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I admitted, but it taught me that I was capable of more than I'd ever imagined. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing. We were deep in conversation about the challenges of balancing motherhood and entrepreneurship when I noticed a commotion near the entrance to the expo. Ryan was walking through the main hall, clearly looking for something or someone. My stomach dropped as I realized he was heading directly toward my booth. I'm sorry, I said to Sarah. Could you excuse me for just a moment? But it was too late. Ryan had spotted me and was approaching with the determined stride I recognized from our marriage, the one that meant he'd decided something and expected everyone else to fall in line. Zara, he said loudly enough for nearby vendors and customers to hear. We need to talk. Ryan, this is neither the time nor the place, I said quietly, hoping to keep the conversation from becoming a scene. I'm working. This can't wait. It's about our daughter. The words, our daughter, spoken in public in front of potential clients and a reporter, made my blood pressure spike. He was doing this deliberately, trying to embarrass me and disrupt my professional life. Ryan, you need to leave. Now. I have every right to be here. This is a public event. Sarah was watching our exchange with obvious interest, her pen poised over her notepad. Other vendors and attendees were starting to stare, drawn by the tension in Ryan's voice. You gave up your rights to Amara, I said, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. The court was very clear about that. I made a mistake, Ryan said, his voice getting louder. I was young and stupid, and I let you manipulate me into signing those papers. Manipulate you? I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. Ryan, you voluntarily terminated your parental rights to avoid paying child support. Nobody manipulated you into anything. That's not true and you know it. You were angry about Brittany, and you used our daughter as revenge. The accusation was so twisted, so completely contrary to the facts, that for a moment I was speechless. Around us, I could hear the murmur of conversations as people tried to politely pretend they weren't listening to our very public argument. Ryan, I said, finding my voice and speaking clearly so everyone around us could hear, you missed the birth of your daughter because you were with your girlfriend. You signed away your parental rights of your own free will. The court reviewed all the evidence and upheld your decision. This conversation is over. It's not over until I say it's over, Ryan snapped, and something in his tone made me step backward. That's when Ethan appeared. Is there a problem here? He asked, moving to stand beside me. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that I'd never heard before. This doesn't concern you, Ryan said. This is between me and my wife. Ex-wife, I corrected automatically. And yes, it does concern Ethan. He's my fiancé and Amara's dad in every way that matters. He's not her father, Ryan said, his voice rising again. I'm her father. Biology matters, whether you want to admit it or not. You know what matters more than biology? Ethan said, his voice still calm but carrying an authority that made Ryan pause. Showing up. Being there when your child is sick. Reading bedtime stories. Teaching them to walk. Putting their needs before your own every single day. That's what makes someone a father. And you think you've done all that? Ryan's face was red now, his composure completely gone. I know I have, Ethan said simply. Because I love them both. And people who love each other don't abandon them when things get difficult. The simple truth of Ethan's words seemed to deflate some of Ryan's anger, but not his desperation. Zara, please, he said, turning back to me. Just give me a chance. Let me prove I can be the father she deserves. Looking at him standing there, making a scene at my business expo, demanding attention and concessions he had no right to expect, I finally saw Ryan clearly for perhaps the first time. Not as the confident man I'd married, not as the victim he portrayed himself to be, but as someone who was fundamentally selfish and unable to put anyone else's needs before his own. Ryan, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet area around my booth, you had 18 months to prove you could be the father Amara deserves. You chose not to. You can't show up now and demand credit for work you didn't do and sacrifices you didn't make. I was going through a hard time. We were all going through a hard time, I interrupted. I was going through pregnancy alone. Labor alone. The first months of motherhood alone. Amara was growing up without her biological father. But we didn't have the luxury of falling apart because we had responsibilities to each other. I looked around at the crowd that had gathered, at Sarah with her notepad, at the other business owners who were watching this play out. You want to know what kind of father Amara has? I said loud enough for everyone to hear. She has the kind of father who answered the phone when a stranger needed help. Who stayed with us through labor when her biological father couldn't be reached. Who has been there for every milestone, every doctor's appointment, every sleepless night. She has a father who chose us every single day not because he had to, but because he wanted to. I turned to face Ryan directly. That's the kind of father a child deserves. Someone who shows up. Someone who stays. Someone who puts their family first, not someone who shows up when it's convenient and demands recognition for nothing. Ryan stood there for a moment, his face cycling through anger, embarrassment, and something that might have been shame. The crowd around us was completely silent. This isn't over, he said finally, but his voice lacked the conviction it had carried earlier. Yes, it is, I said firmly. It's been over since the night you chose not to answer my calls. It's been over since you signed those papers. And it's especially over now that you've shown everyone here exactly who you are. Ryan looked around at the faces watching him, seemed to realize how he must appear to these strangers, and turned to leave without another word. As he walked away, the crowd around my booth began to disperse, some people offering supportive smiles, others returning to their own business with the polite discretion of people who had witnessed something intensely personal. Sarah approached me with a thoughtful expression. "That was quite something," she said. "Would you be willing to talk about single parenthood and building a business as part of your feature story?" "I think I'd like that," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "And the gentleman who defended you, is he part of the story?" I looked at Ethan, who was quietly straightening the materials on my display table that had been knocked askew during the confrontation. "He's the best part of the story," I said. The rest of the expo went better than I could have imagined. Word of the confrontation spread through the business community, but not in the way I'd feared. Instead of seeing me as someone surrounded by drama, people seemed to view me as someone who had handled a difficult situation with grace and strength. Several potential clients specifically mentioned that they were impressed by how I'd conducted myself under pressure, saying it showed them I could handle their projects with professionalism even when things got complicated. "You know what the best part of today was?" Ethan asked as we packed up my booth at the end of the expo. "Getting 3 new client consultations? Watching you stand up for our family in front of everyone. Watching you own your truth and not apologize for the life we've built together. I'm tired of being afraid of him," I said. Tired of worrying about what he might do next. Today felt like closure. "Because it was closure," Ethan said. "You drew a line and you meant it. And everyone who witnessed it knows you meant it." That evening, we picked up Amara from Rebecca's house and had dinner together as a family. Amara babbled excitedly as if she understood something important had happened, reaching for both of us and clapping her hands when we made silly faces at her. "Dada," she said clearly, looking directly at Ethan. It was her first real word, and there was no question who she was talking to. Ethan's eyes filled with tears as he picked her up and spun her around the kitchen. "That's right, sweetheart," he said. "I'm your dada. And you're my little girl. Forever and always." Looking at them together, I realized that Ryan's public confrontation had actually been a gift. It had forced me to articulate, in front of witnesses, the truth I'd been living for over a year. Families aren't built on biology alone. They're built on choice, commitment, and unconditional love. And the family we'd chosen was unshakable. 2 years later, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the bridal suite of the small chapel where Ethan and I would be married in 2 hours. The dress was simple but elegant, with delicate lace sleeves and a flowing skirt that made me feel beautiful without trying too hard. More importantly, it was comfortable enough for me to chase after 2 children if necessary. "Mama?" 2-year-old Amara burst through the door, followed closely by 6-month-old Benjamin, who was being carried by Rebecca. "Look at my beautiful family," I said, opening my arms to hug Amara, who was wearing a pale yellow dress and tiny white sandals. Benjamin gurgled happily from Rebecca's arms, his chubby cheeks and bright brown eyes making him look like a miniature version of his father. He'd been an easy baby, content and smiley, as if he knew he was born into a family that had already weathered its storms and found its peace. "Are you ready for this?" Rebecca asked, settling into a chair with Benjamin while Amara climbed onto my lap, careful not to wrinkle my dress. "I've been ready for this since the night Ethan answered my wrong number text," I said, smoothing Amara's hair. "I just can't believe we're finally here." The past 2 years had been filled with more joy than I'd ever imagined possible. My business had grown to the point where I'd hired 3 full-time employees and moved into a real office space. Ethan had been promoted to head of emergency medicine at his hospital. We'd bought our house and filled it with the sounds of children laughing, family dinners, and the kind of everyday happiness that comes from being with people who truly know and love you. Benjamin had been conceived on our 2nd try, and his pregnancy had been everything Amara's wasn't. Ethan had been there for every doctor's appointment, every midnight craving, every moment of excitement and anticipation. When I went into labor at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, he'd been right beside me, holding my hand and coaching me through contractions until our son arrived safely into the world. Ryan had kept his distance since the confrontation at the business expo. I'd heard through the community grapevine that he'd moved to another state with his new girlfriend, finally accepting that his chapter in our lives was permanently closed. Patricia had become a regular part of our lives, visiting every few weeks and building a genuine relationship with both children. She'd proven herself to be reliable and respectful of our boundaries, and Amara adored her Grandma Patty, who brought books and always remembered her favorite snacks. "Mama, is today the day Daddy becomes my real daddy?" Amara asked, using the terminology we discussed to help her understand the adoption process. Ethan has always been your real daddy, I told her. Today is just the day we make it official with papers so everyone in the whole world knows he's your daddy. And then we'll all have the same last name? That's right. After today we'll all be the Brooks family. The adoption had been finalized 6 months ago, a process that was surprisingly simple since Ryan had voluntarily terminated his rights and there was extensive documentation of Ethan's role as Amara's primary father figure. Amara would grow up with no memory of a time when Ethan wasn't her daddy, which felt like exactly how it should be. A knock at the door interrupted our conversation, and my best friend Lisa peeked her head in. "Almost time," she said. "How are we feeling?" "Perfect," I said and meant it completely. Lisa had flown in from Chicago to be my maid of honor, and seeing her reminded me of how far I'd traveled from the scared, isolated woman I'd been during my marriage to Ryan. I had friends now, a community, a support system built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than obligation. "Let me take Benjamin so you can have a moment with Amara," Rebecca offered. After they left, I knelt down so I was at Amara's eye level. "Do you remember when you were a baby and Daddy came to help us?" I asked. Amara nodded solemnly, though I knew she couldn't actually remember being 6 months old. "Well, today we're promising to be a family forever and always. No matter what happens, no matter how big you get or how many new adventures we have, we'll always be together." "Forever and always," Amara repeated, having learned this phrase as our family motto. "That's right, baby girl. Forever and always." The ceremony was small and perfect, held in the same chapel where my grandparents had been married 60 years ago. Amara walked down the aisle first, scattering flower petals with the serious concentration of someone who'd been practicing for weeks. Ethan stood at the altar in his navy blue suit, holding Benjamin, both of them beaming as they watched us approach. My father walked me down the aisle, tears in his eyes as he prepared to officially welcome Ethan into our family. My parents had adored Ethan from the moment they met him, grateful beyond words for the man who had stepped up when their daughter needed help most. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of two people who have already proven their commitment to each other through the family they've built together. The vows we'd written were simple but heartfelt. Ethan promised to love me, Amara, and Benjamin with the same unwavering dedication he'd shown from the beginning. I promised to choose him every day to build our future together, and to never forget that our love story began with an act of kindness that changed all our lives. I love you," Ethan said as we exchanged rings, "for the mother you are, the partner you've become, and the strength you've shown in building this beautiful life with me." "I love you," I replied, "for answering the phone that night, for staying when you could have left, and for showing me that love isn't about needing someone, it's about choosing them." When the minister pronounced us husband and wife, Amara cheered and Benjamin gurgled his approval, and I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. The reception was held at the country club where I'd had my first date with Ethan, the same place where he'd nervously asked if he could see me again outside of emergency situations. We'd come full circle, surrounded by family and friends who had supported us through our journey to this moment. "Speech. Speech," called out Dr. Martinez, who had become a close friend over the years. Ethan stood up, still holding Benjamin, and raised his glass of champagne. "3 years ago, I got a text message that was meant for someone else," he began. "A woman I'd never met was asking for help, and I had a choice: ignore it and go back to sleep, or get in my car and drive across town to help a stranger." The room grew quiet as people listened to our origin story. I thought I was just helping someone get to the hospital safely. I had no idea that answering that text would lead to the most important relationships of my life. "Zara, you and Amara saved me in ways you'll never know. You taught me that family isn't about sharing DNA, it's about sharing love, commitment, and the willingness to show up for each other every single day." He looked down at Benjamin, then over at Amara, who was sitting at the children's table but paying rapt attention to her daddy's words. "To my wife, who is the strongest, most beautiful, most incredible woman I've ever known. To Amara, who made me a father and taught me that love multiplies rather than divides. And to Benjamin, who completed our family in ways we didn't even know we needed." He raised his glass higher. "To wrong numbers that turn out to be exactly right. To second chances and chosen families. And to the rest of our lives together." As everyone toasted and cheered, I looked around the room at the people who had become our village. Patricia was helping Amara with her dinner. Rebecca was dancing with my father. Lisa was taking pictures of everything, determined to document every moment of our special day. Later, as we danced to our first song as husband and wife, "At Last," by Etta James. The first thought about how far we'd all come. Any regrets? Ethan asked, spinning me gently around the dance floor. Only one, I said, looking up at him. What's that? I regret that it took me so long to understand what real love looks like. I wasted so much time thinking I needed someone to complete me instead of looking for someone who would complement the person I already was. Well, Ethan said, pulling me closer, I'm grateful for your journey, even the hard parts. Because it led you to me. It led us to each other, I corrected. And to them. We looked over at our children. Amara was showing Benjamin how to clap along to the music while Benjamin stared at her with obvious adoration. What do you think happens next? I asked. More late-night feedings. More first steps and first words. Maybe more babies if we're lucky. Definitely more adventures. Definitely more love, I added. Definitely more love, he agreed. As the song ended and we prepared to cut our cake, I caught sight of myself in the mirrored wall of the reception hall. The woman looking back at me was confident, radiant, surrounded by people who adored her and children who called her mama. She looked nothing like the scared, lonely woman who had sent a desperate text to the wrong number on a dark night 3 years ago. But in a way she was exactly the same woman. She was just finally living the life she deserved, with people who saw her worth and chose to honor it every single day. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you really does lead to the best thing. Sometimes the wrong number is exactly the right call. And sometimes, when you're brave enough to believe you deserve more, the universe conspires to give you everything you never dared to dream of. As Amara fed Benjamin a bite of wedding cake and both children dissolved into giggles, I realized our story was just beginning. The text that had started it all was just the first line of a love story that would last forever.